People who begin learning photography face the following problem when buying a DSLR camera. They see this wheel with different modes or a window with camera settings and don't even try to learn the basics. There's a landscape mode, a portrait mode, a shutter priority mode, and so on. Why do I need to know what ISO, shutter speed, and aperture are if I can just turn the wheel and the camera will do all the heavy lifting for me? But cameras make mistakes, and it happens more often in budget devices. However, there is one very important mode labeled M, or manual camera settings. And today we're going to talk about those settings, what each parameter is responsible for, and how it should be configured for making the best possible shots. My name is Otto Weiner, welcome to the PhotoWorks channel, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's start. When shooting in manual mode, there are only 3 parameters that we should look at. Yeah, there are more of them, but those are the 3 elephants, 3 main pillars. So, the shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. If you look at the DSLR, there is a mirror that opens up. Shutter speed is basically the time the mirror is open. These values are different for every manufacturer. For example, in this budget Canon 650D, you can set the shutter speed anywhere from 20 seconds to 1/4000th of a second. The lower the shutter speed, the more light enters your sensor. The faster the shutter speed, the less light gets in. It's also worth considering that the longer the shutter speed, the blurrier the object in motion is, and if you shake the camera, the image won't be crisp. We can draw a simple and solid conclusion: you won't be able to take a portrait shot with long exposure without a tripod. Now we move on to the next value, which can help with night shots. It's ISO, or the sensitivity of the sensor to light. Everything is simple. On this camera, we can choose between 100 and 12,800 ISO. The lower the ISO, the less noisy the shots are. Remember, each camera has its own ISO threshold. If I set ISO to 800 or 1600 on this cheap camera, with a 99% guarantee, you will see noise. And there is nothing shameful in making this mistake. Before you start playing with ISO, take the camera, go into a dark room, take a few shots at different values, and compare the noise you get. If this noise starts appearing at, for example, 800, I wouldn't recommend you exceeding this threshold. The third point to talk about is, of course, the aperture. In simple terms, this is the amount of light that passes through your lens. This is more a setting for lenses than for the camera itself. Shooting with aperture isn't an easy thing, often paired with difficulties. Aperture setting may vary from one lens to another. If you use Helio 442 like me, you'll notice that the aperture adjustment is done on the lens. The aperture is changed by turning the adjustment wheel. Here is the default lens that came with the camera. It gives us no control over aperture, only zoom and focus. The aperture in this case can be changed on the camera using a dedicated wheel. Also, let's look at this monster. This Soviet giant has no aperture adjustment whatsoever. It's fixed. To simplify, the aperture value affects the background blur. The wider the aperture, the more blurred the background is. At the same time, the photo is brighter because more light passes through the lens. It can get confusing, but I will explain how to deal with it. Before I do that, one fact must be mentioned. No matter which settings or presets you use for shooting, do it in RAW format. JPEG images weigh less and are more convenient to transfer, but this effectiveness isn't a bliss. Trust me, if you shoot JPEGs and make a mistake with exposure, you will regret not using RAW. This memory-hungry format retains all information in colors, brightness, etc. All parameters are saved and you can manipulate them with more freedom than you ever could on JPEG. By the way, all these edits can be conveniently performed in the PhotoWorks. You can open an underexposed or overexposed photo, select a ready-made processing preset, or manually adjust brightness, cropping, curves, working with presets, built-in filters. PhotoWorks has it all, plus retouching with artificial intelligence. This friendly and simple to use photo editor has countless useful tools and instruments for precise image correction. By clicking on the link in the description, you can download this photo editor with a 5-day free trial. Or you can purchase a full version of PhotoWorks with 60% discount using the same link. And this option seems much more appealing to me. Download PhotoWorks, study photography and processing, and we are moving on. How to operate all these values: aperture, light sensitivity, shutter speed, how, what, where, Calm down, we'll figure it out right now. Let's check out practically in the field how these values should be set for good, crisp images. Just turn on the camera and make a shot without any adjustments. Look what you've got. Here, my ISO is set to 100, shutter speed to 1/160th, and the aperture seems to be maxed out. Everything is filled with light. What should we do? The ISO can't get any lower. The only option is adjusting the shutter speed. Let's make it 1/4000th. And voila, the picture turned out pretty good. We can make it slightly slower and still get a good looking photo, but what if we want no background blur? In this case, we close the aperture and take a photo. We see far less light in the image than we did before. Now ISO can be increased, but at daytime it's not necessary. Let's change the shutter speed and set it, for example, to 1/800th. The photo turned out pretty okay. If we want to get closer to realistic settings, the shutter speed should be set to around 1/100. Let's see. The photo came out blurry because the hands were shaking. Now we increase the shutter speed to 1/500th and compensate that by increasing the ISO to 200. And this photo is exposed just right. I hope now you better understand what the ISO, shutter speed, and aperture are and how these values are connected. If not, then leave a comment down below and I will try explaining everything even simpler. This is PhotoWorks, my name is Arthur, and see you in future videos. Cheers.